Okay, here we go, guys. Your first video. So this notice is 0.1, so it's actually before the first chapter. You will not have a full unit test on these first couple sections. You will have to do mastery checks on each one, but you won't get to a unit test until we get to unit 1. So this is just some basic information, some prior things that you should already know. So these first couple sections should feel hopefully easy, but if they don't, that's okay. That's why we're doing them, just to kind of refresh your memory and bring back some things here from middle school. First of all, up here, this is what your packet looks like, right? These are the notes that are in front of you. Remember how we talked about doing this packet. First of all, when you're taking notes, use headphones, okay? You need to make sure you are hearing every word I'm saying. Put every other distraction away. Put your cell phone away. Get off that social media, get off Twitter, get off Snapchat. You need to be focused on the math here. If you have questions as you're watching this video, write them over here in this margin. You've got all this space to write down anything you want. And then when you come to school, you can ask me any of those questions, or you can ask one of your friends those questions. After you take those notes, you're going to practice and check. Okay, it is just practice. So practice isn't always going to be perfect. So that's why you need to check the answers. Look for mistakes that you've made. See why you got something wrong and fix it up. And then circle anything you want to talk about, anything you want to ask me or ask a friend in class the next day. And then after you've done that, you've checked all your work, then you're going to do those application problems. Apply what you've learned. Think differently. Have grit. Okay, so some of them are going to be challenging. Today, the ones on this packet are a little different, but some of them get a little bit hard, a little bit difficult, and you're going to have some grit and some perseverance to just get through them. But remember, you are always welcome to ask for help on any of those questions. Okay? Remember also when you're checking your answers, you've got to have a little bit of discipline to not just copy the answers. That's not what it's there for. Some students are going to do that, I'm telling you right now, and guess what happens? They end up failing because they don't know how to do the work because all they did was copy things. So have some discipline. Don't look at those answers until you've attempted the problems. Okay? All right, so this section is all about solving simple equations. Remember that when you are solving equations with two or more steps, you apply the inverse operations in the reverse order. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, what's an inverse operation? It's an opposite operation. So the opposite of addition, subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of multiplication, division, and division, multiplication. So it's just the opposite operation. Okay? Now, let's look at a problem and see what we're talking about. We have this equation. We want to figure out what x is actually equal to. So some number divided by 2 plus 3 equals 19. We have to figure out what that sum number is. What is that number? Well, what happened to that number, this x? Remember, that's a variable. Variable stands for a number. So what is happening to this number that we don't know? Well, the first thing that's happening is it's being divided by 2, right? This is step 1. The next thing that's happening is you're adding 3. That's step 2. So this is what you did to create the equation. We divided by 2, we added 3. We took some number, divided by 2, added 3. Well, in order to solve an equation, you apply the inverse operations in the reverse order. So what's the inverse of division? Multiplication. What's the inverse of addition? Subtraction. So we did the inverse operations, but we have to do them in the reverse order. So to solve this, what we're going to do is subtract 3. These cancel. That's what inverse operations do. So then we have x divided by 2. 19 minus 3 is 16. And then the second thing to do is multiply by 2. So times 2. Remember the golden rule. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Multiplication by 2, division by 2, those cancel. We get x, and 16 times 2 is 32. Okay? So those are the key things to do. Figure out what's happening to your variable and undo it in the opposite way with the opposite operations. Keep in mind, whatever you do on one side, you do to the other. Okay, so this is your answer. That number that we didn't know, we now know it's 32. Also, keep in mind you can check your answers. How do you check an answer to an equation? Well, you take that original equation, you take your answer, and you plug it in. So I'm not going to ask you to write this out. Should be doing this maybe in your calculator or in your head if you can do some mental math. But what you would be thinking is, okay, I have 32 divided by 2 plus 3. Is that actually equal to 19? Well, 32 divided by 2 is 16. 16 plus 3 is 19. So yeah, that is equal to 19. The answer is correct. Okay? If you would get numbers that were not equal down here, that would tell you that you either made a mistake or you plugged it in wrong. So make sure you're doing that part correctly. Okay, I know that was quick, but again, this should be a review. So hopefully it is. Okay, then in the videos, I'm always going to go over and do some examples. Remember, I want you to watch every single one of these examples because different things will happen in different problems. Okay, so the first one, let's see what's happening. What's the first operation happening to the variable? Is it division by 3 or plus 2.5? Hopefully you said you're adding 2.5. So if I add 2.5, that's the first thing happening. Then I'm dividing by 3. That's what I did to create the equation. To solve it then, I need to go in the opposite direction with the opposite operations. The opposite of addition, subtraction. The opposite of division, multiplication, and I'm doing it in this order. So that means the first thing I need to do to solve this problem is multiply both sides by 3. Multiplication by 3, division by 3, because those are inverse operations, they cancel, and I'm left with f plus 2.5. And I did it on both sides, so over here I get a 6. The second thing I need to do is subtract 2.5. Again, doing it on both sides. And f equals 3.5. That would be your solution. And of course, you would want to plug it back in, check it, and make sure it does work out. Okay? Also, another thing about these videos, if I go too fast at any point, the nice thing is you don't have to raise your hand and say, Mrs. Fishel, can you slow down? I'm behind. You can just pause the video. Okay? So if you're like, oh, she's going too fast, pause the video. Take your time, catch up, rewind it, and then keep going. Okay? Number 2 here, you've got your variable r. What's happening to it? The first thing that's happening to it is you're multiplying by 16. After that, you're subtracting 12. Okay, so that's how you created it. That's how the equation was set up. To undo it, go in the opposite direction with the opposite operation. So first you're going to add 12, and then you're going to divide by 16. So plus 12 on both sides gives us this. And then looking at this equation, we know we need to divide by 16. R equals 1/2. Yes, you will get fractions at times. Yes, you will get decimals at times. Do not be afraid of them. Okay, always nice to circle your answer. Make it nice and easy to find. Number 3 is a little different. Hopefully you are seeing that these two things are like terms. They have the same variables, same exponents to the first power. So that means we can combine them. 2j minus 4j is negative 2j. Okay, so we've simplified the equation. We turn this equation into a simpler version of itself, and then we can continue solving. Okay, I'm not going to keep writing the steps out. If you like that method, you are welcome to keep doing it. Hopefully, though, you are okay with just seeing what to do next. So the next thing to do would be to subtract 10. We get negative 2j, don't leave that negative sign off, equals 2. And then you're going to divide by negative 2. And you get negative 1. Again, you would want to plug this in and check it. In this case, you're going to have to plug it in twice because you had 2 variables. Okay, so this would, once you plug it in, you'd get negative 2 plus 4, which is 2, plus 10, which is 12. So it does check. So you can just do a mental check, use your calculator if you want. You don't have to write the checks out. Okay, now number 4, what's different about it? the variables on the right side. Some students will say, oh, I absolutely don't like that, and they'll rewrite it with the variable on the left side. If you want to do that, that is fine. It's equivalent, no big deal. But I'm going to go ahead and just work it the way it is. So step 1, I'm going to add 10. I'm making sure I do it on both sides, keeps my equation balanced and equal. I get 15 equals 1/3 x. At this point, you actually have two options to get rid of that 1/3. The first option, what most students will do, I think, is divide by 1/3. And 15 divided by 1/3, if you're not so great with fractions, that's okay. You've got a calculator for a reason. 15 divided by, and there's different ways we learn to put in the fraction. So you can do whatever you would like. This is one way to do it, though. 15 divided by 1/3 gives me 45. So 45 equals x, okay? And that would be good. However, let me back it up and show you a different way, a way that I personally like better. And that is, instead of dividing by 1/3, you can multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/3 is just the flipped over version of it, 3/1. Because what happens then, even though this is all multiplication, the 3 and the 3, they cancel, and you just get 1x, which is just x. And 3 times 15, I don't need my calculator for that. I know it's 45. So I prefer this way because a lot of times it's easier to calculate. All right. On this one, it's kind of weird with that negative sign out front. Well, the key to this problem is remembering that if you have a fraction, let's say we have the fraction 2/3, if it's negative, that negative sign can either be out front, but that's also equal to if it's on top, which is also equal to if it's on the bottom. So you can actually take that negative and put it any of those places. But what you cannot do, not equal, is put it in both places. Whoops. Okay, you can't have that because a negative and a negative, that would actually be positive 2/3. And this is not positive 2/3. So in order to help me solve this, I'm going to choose to put the negative with the number. You absolutely could have chosen to put it with the variable, but that's just going to make it one step longer. But that would be okay. But because I chose to put it with a number, now when I go to solve this, I get rid of the division by doing the opposite. I multiply by -5. So then immediately I get rid of those -5s, and I get d equals -60. Check it, plug it in, make sure you're good to go. All right, last one. This one looks kind of weird, but if you break it down, look at your variable, what are the things you're doing to it? You're dividing, and then you've got the 3, okay? Which one should you get rid of first? Well, you do them in that opposite direction, so -3, you're subtracting 3 rather. 1/5 minus 3. Again, if you're not great with fractions, that's okay. I'd prefer you would be, but that's all right. Go ahead and use your calculator if you need to. So 1/5, whoops, now watch how I type that. See how that's all in the denominator? I don't want that. So I got to arrow over, -3. So always make sure what you're typing in the calculator is really what you want in there. And that gives me -14/5 equal to -x/3. And then this is just basically the same thing I did over here. I'm going to choose to put that negative sign in the denominator so that when I multiply, I can multiply by the negative and get rid of it. X equals, take that -14/5. It's already in my calculator. So I'm just going to hit times, and it's going to take that last answer and multiply it by the -3 that I want. And I get 42/5. Sometimes students will get these weird fractions and they'll immediately assume they're wrong. Please don't do that. Check your answer. If you're afraid you're wrong, check your answer and make sure that you are correct. So 3 minus my answer, and here's another way, 42/5 is my last answer in my calculator. So I can just hit Control the negative key to bring up that answer. So 3 minus the answer divided by 3 or over 3. Let me show it to you as a fraction. Okay, so that's what this right-hand side is. Hopefully when I hit equal, I'm going to get 1/5, and I did. So my answer checks. Okay, all right, I want you to pause the video at this point and do the last 2 problems. Oftentimes I will ask you to do this. Please make sure you're actually doing it. Pause the video now, find that pause button, and do these 2 problems on your own, and then hit play to check your work. So pause the video now. Okay, check your answers, see if they're the same thing I got. Number 7, I started by multiplying by 8, and then I added 4. I had divide by 8, so I multiplied by 8. I had minus 4, so I added 4. Number 8, I began by combining like terms. Keep in mind when you combine these like terms right here, you don't forget that sign. Okay, so it's not 4 minus 9, it's negative 4 minus 9, which gives you the negative 13. Okay, so watch for signs there. Okay, that is all I've got for you. So at this point now, you want to continue working in your packet. You want to do every single problem, checking your work. Make sure you check your work on against the practice solutions that are posted online. Okay. I also always have a copy of those at my desk. So maybe you're in class and you want to check your answers, but you don't want to go through the rigmarole of logging onto the Chromebook. You are welcome to just come get the printed out solutions and check them. Okay? All right, guys, good luck. Yay, first section.